wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guests introduce themselves to our listeners and viewers at home. And we're going to start with the one, the only, Mr. Dave Hensley.
Hello, I'm Dave Hensley. I write military science fiction, space opera, and post-apocalyptic sci-fi for Three Ravens and Canon Publishing. You can track me down at on the socials and or davidwhensley.com.
Freaking standing next, we have Miss Hunter K. Williams.
Not Williams. Nice try. Hi, I'm actually Hunter K. Wallace, but this is still fun.
I was testing you. You did good. I thought with all the chaos going on with your chickens, maybe you would miss it.
Yeah, but I don't have the chickens anymore, so I
see what I mean? Chaos. Where did the chickens come from?
Okay, let's see. I write fantasy, and I'm starting to dabble in science fiction. So you guys can pull me out when you feel like I've hit my safety limit.
Outstanding. I actually have Wallace right down. I don't know why I said Williams, but we're going to go with it. Next, we have Mr. James JE Pittman.
Hey guys, JE Pittman here. Just call me James. JE is for the Googles. I write urban fantasy mostly with Felix Chance. I also write a little bit of action sci-fi with Pandora Squad. I dabble in horror. I dabble in like straight sci-fi. I dabble in a lot of areas of genre that, well, I just have fun with. So just go with it.
Outstanding. Next, we have Mr. J. Barnson.
Hi, Jay Barnson. I'm a reformed video game developer, and I'm now corrupting the youth with my writing. I write pulpy speculative fiction, so mostly fantasy, but lots of some science fiction and horror in there as well. And happy to be here.
The the Word doc, like they hate your last name. They keep wanting to take the N out.
Okay, I have a story about that, but maybe after the introduction is concerned. Back with my old video game developer story.
All right, next we have Mr. Lynn Barry.
Hi, I'm Len. I am the writer of Ethereal Darkness. If you'd like your stories dark with a sliver of possibility and hope, well, I might have the possibility of hope for you. I have science fiction, I have dark fantasy, and I'm working on more of both.
All right, and I am fixing all the places there for you, Jay, so we get that right, because we want to send them to you. And finally, we have the many voices of Mr. Michael LaVoice.
Pardon me, Mac. You know where I could rent a U-Drive flying saucer? I got to get back to the Earth. Hi, Michael LaVoice, former voice actor. You can see why. I write science fiction and fantasy and space opera. The author of Galaxy's Most Wanted and the soon-to-be-released Gladius League's Any Given Doomsday, coming in February from Chris Kennedy Publishing.
So the next part of the introduction to your listeners, how we met them. We actually all met. We were sitting in on a lecture by Lanthrop Doc Brown, and we decided we'd get talking over coffee later or earlier. It's hard to tell. Got a little wonky there.
I voted for earlier.
Yeah, but then your DeLorean didn't get very fast, so it kind of got weird.
And my TARDIS blew a fin. It was awful.
It was awful. All right, so how did they lose the N in your name, Barnson, before we get started?
Oh, okay. So it was actually one of the first games I did was for Sony, for the original Sony PlayStation. Yes, I'm old. And anyway, so we're kind of like a, first party contracted developer, and I did a game called Warhawk and Twisted Metal. And anyway, they were doing the manual. They were in charge of the manual, and they could not get the manual right. They kept putting bad information about how to play because they didn't know what they were doing. And so we kept correcting them, and finally they got tired of all the corrections and quit allowing for corrections. And they hadn't yet done like the credits yet. So one day my producer came in, and we just gotten the final version from Sony that was about to go out with the game as a launch title. And he's like, Jay, I'm so sorry. and it had in the credits in the manual. It said your credits are correct in the game itself, but in there I am immortalized as Jay Barnson. People can't do a son of a barn. What?
Hey, I'll tell you what, Twisted Metal is one of my favorite like original Sony PlayStation games, man.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. And I actually got a TV series. I mean,
it made writing Car Wars a little easier.
Oh, hey, well, I've got a Car Wars novel in there too that should be coming out soon. So
yes,
reason.
you do.
All right, and because the religion questions today will be topical, we might go a little afield as we discuss our answers, but that's part of the fun. So, because we are the Blasters and Blades podcast, we cannot skip the religion questions. So, Back to the Future, Time Bandits, or My Science Project. And we're going to start with you, Dave.
Oh, for me, it's definitely Back to the Future. 1, 2, and 3, man. I love all three of those movies. Partially because they came out when I was a kid, so for nostalgia, but also because I absolutely love Huey Lewis and the News, and their music is all through those movies.
And the floating hoverboards instead of skateboards, I want one.
Not to mention Huey's guest appearance as the teacher telling the band, "You're just too darn loud."
Just too darn loud.
You're just too darn loud.
And ZZ Top in the third one.
Yep,
that's right.
I don't remember ZZ Top in there.
Yeah, the town party
at the hoedown.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe you didn't recognize it because they were playing acoustic instruments.
Yeah, maybe. All right, Hunter. Back to the Future, Time Bandits, or My Science Project.
Back to the Future.
That
But
one has
the part when Doc realizes later Doc realizes how bad back Doc dressed trying to imitate what he would look like in the actual past.
Yeah.
My favorite Back to the Future scene was when he meets his mom and then like they're dancing and I just got a little weird. That was just
It's Calvin Klein on your underwear.
yeah. All right, James.
You know, I'm not going to break trend. Back to the Future.
Okay. Jay.
Well, I guess I'm going to go with the crowd because they got Johnny Be Good in there. And yeah, it's Back to the Future is where it's at.
But the Johnny B. Good scene creates the Beethoven paradox. We'll get to that later.
Yep.
Okay. Len.
I'm going to break the trend just because I want to break the trend. I'm going to say Time Bandits because what other time travel stuff involves evil, God, and Sean Connery being Sean Connery?
Time Bandits is a classic.
You can't go wrong with the giant floating head.
Right?
Dad, don't touch it. It's evil.
Right. See?
All right. And then finally we got Michael LaVoice.
Man, this is hard though because they're all three great. I love Time Bandits. My Science Project was great because it was the geeks did good. And but you know, I guess I just have to go with the one I've seen the most, and that's got to be the Back to the Future trilogy, because it was just so iconic. As a child of the '80s, you know, those were my very formative years, and having Max Headroom like Ronald Reagan and Ayatollah Khomeini on the same screen, that's just great.
Okay. And because Stabby is here, Stabby, Back to the Future, Time Bandits, or My Science Project?
That's okay. All are great picks. But it wouldn't be Stabby unless Stabby threw out a curveball. So, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures.
That's the next question. Damn it. Jeez,
So we
all
know
right.
what she wants for the next round.
All right, Nick.
Winning.
Nick.
Yes, JR.
Pick one. Hopefully one on the list and not the next list.
No, I'm it's on the list. I'm like everybody else said, they're all great movies. Huge fan of the Back to the Future franchise. I'm gonna go with My Science Project. Dennis Hopper, awesome. just the whole premise was crazy. Like what was it, like Ellis Air Force Base they broke into out there in Nevada, and he steals an alien warp drive that just starts running amok. And then Hopper comes back in the end because he went back to the 60s and relived his glory days. Like, it's great, man. You know, peace and love. And I'm like, man, this guy's a fruit. And I'm like, no, it's a fun movie. I remember there was like multiple summers where I just watched that VHS over and over and over and over again. Because
So
it was
I
one
like-
of those movies that just didn't show up in like syndication.
I liked Time Bandits because the idea that your wall would just open and these strange creatures would pop out and take you on an adventure. I mean, it had the same reason kids like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The idea that something so mundane could take you somewhere so cool.
You know what other movie where a wall opened up and you could go on an adventure with some creatures? Hellraiser.
Wrong kind of
Yes.
adventure. Not the kind of thing I wanted at 9. I'm just saying. It's not the kind of adventure.
Wow, this just got dark.
Right? All right. All right.
Moving on.
Because
So
we are
which
polytheistic-
character invoked has gotten the most fan mail of people in love with them?
All right. And because we are polytheistic, the Terminator, Flight of the Navigator, or Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Dave.
Dude, that's tough. I got to go with Bill and Ted again. It showed up exactly at the right time for me developing in my teens. Wild Stallions for the win, and kidnapping Napoleon and taking him to Waterloo.
Be excellent to each other is another good one-liner from that.
Yeah, and Dan not Dan Carlin. My God, George Carlin showing
George
up
Carlin.
in there. Yeah,
Dan Carlin's the history guy, dude.
right. George Carlin is the funny guy.
The history guy's awesome, though. If you like history podcasts, you get nerdy
I
with it.
love Dan Carlin's hardcore history, but that has nothing to do with Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Not at all. Although, he might have been a good source for them to consult if they wanted to do a little better. Hunter.
Well, my dad introduced me to Bill and Ted, and thanks to that, I know Noah's wife's name. It's Joan of Arc.
Okay, Miss of Arc.
Yep.
It's an excellent reference. I appreciate your callback abilities. Well done. You're probably great at Jeopardy and trivia. All right, James.
Still not bucking the trend. Bill and Ted. Got to go with it. It's a time traveling box with awesome people, fun adventures, and for a kid, a really interesting way to think about history.
Yeah, I mean, one way to get the reports right is you just bring the people that you're talking about there. All right, Jay.
All right. Well, I want to tell you, you guys have seen the third one, Bill and Ted Face the Music?
I have not. That's the new one, right?
Yeah, that's the new one. So that was, I'm going to go with the same. I hate voting against the Terminator. I love Terminator, Terminator 2. They only made the 2 movies, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway,
Those are the only 2 that exist officially in canon, yes.
Yeah, in this timeline,
they made
yes.
Terminator
Just like
3.
Highlander 1 is the only Highlander film.
right. So anyway, at least unless Henry Cavill pulls it off.
No, a pox upon him.
Oh, he
It's not
might.
going to be remade.
Oh, come on.
All right, we got to get into the, there's the TV series too, which was actually pretty decent. Anyway.
Excuse me, sorry.
All right. But yes, I am going with Bill and Ted. It is most excellent.
Outstanding. Lynn.
I kind of want to invoke the Terminator just because how many movie series have had 6 entries and half of them be the third movie and one of them be Terminator 4? How often does that happen? Terminator happens, but aside
Kind of
from that,
timey-wimey, isn't it?
it's a credit. It's called They Couldn't Commit. That's what it's called. But that first one, it's just so it grabs you kind of like in your heart, right where your heart meets your throat, and it's just kind of like, hey, This is what we're going to turn ourselves into. So have fun with that. There's no getting around it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the right level of vicious for because it has enough bite, and time travel needs more bite.
Okay. LaVoice?
Yeah.
Well, he's got a point as far as the Terminator goes. The problem I have with the Terminator is the paradox it creates. If you save John Connor from the Terminator and Reese becomes his dad, but then could that future actually be avoided? Now they know too much. It's just so many paradox possibilities. It bugged me. I was already a big time travel fan by the time that came out, being a Doctor Who fan and a Time Wars fan. So, but as far as just for the sheer fun of it, Bill and Ted was not only very well written and very well done, and it had George Carlin, who's one of my all-time favorite comedians. It was also my first exposure to the band Extreme. Because the mall sequence with "Do You Want to Play" and Nuno Betancourt's outstanding solo work. So I'm just going to have to go with Bill and Ted because it was just all around a great series.
All right, Stabby. Is she still with us?
I'm here. I'm here.
She's going to vote for Back to the Future.
In all fairness, I have been in the middle of the town for Back to the Future because we have year-round passes to Universal Studios. But that's neither here nor there. I was actually thinking of a movie that we haven't talked about yet, which is The Final Countdown. And I think that one needs a little bit of, cheering on here because, I mean, for a whole aircraft carrier to go back in time, not just a person, not just a little room or a phone booth, but a whole aircraft carrier to be transported from 1980 to 1941, and they get to try to help save Pearl Harbor. I mean, it was just beautiful, beautifully done. So I'm gonna go with Final Countdown.
Now I want to go watch that because I haven't seen it.
Oh man, it's great.
Oh,
Dang.
great movie.
Tomcats taking on Zeros. It's a beautiful thing.
Nice. Nick?
I'm gonna go with Flight of the Navigator.
Nice.
Yeah, mine too. I watched that when I would skip school. I mean, when I would play sick. I mean, when I was ill in elementary school.
When you were ill.
Well, you had Paul Rubens as the voice of the ship computer.
That's right.
You know?
It was.
And it drove me nuts because I was a huge Pee-wee's Playhouse fan because it came out during my childhood. I'm like, I know that voice. And I didn't know that Pee Wee Herman's name was Paul Rubens at the time. So when the credits rolled, I'm like, no, that's Pee Wee Herman because it said Paul Rubens. And I'm like, that don't make sense to me because I was a kid and I was stupid. But now it makes sense. And I love that movie. I love the whole thing. You had the little creature in his pocket. Just that's every kid's fantasy. You know,
and didn't he build that
an alien spacecraft.
if my memory serves? He built his own little machine, if I'm right.
I don't remember. I need to revisit it. It's on Disney Plus because Disney owns everything. Probably part of my soul at this point.
It's in the terms and
Definitely
conditions.
don't have an allergy.
Yeah, it is. Just probably half my Star Wars collection is owned by Disney.
No, that might be one where there was one where he built his own and another one where he found it. This one, I did a quick Google.
This is a found.
This is a found. Okay.
Yeah.
He did not build.
But the idea when you're watching it as a young boy and it's a young boy getting to go on these adventures, that's what appeals to me. And that's
the Explorers. That's what you're thinking of.
That's a good one. Yeah.
We just watched that the other day because I was watching Skeleton Crew. I was like, man, this is giving off Explorer vibes in the Star Wars universe. So we had to go back and revisit because like the boy hadn't seen it. I'm like, what's the Explorers? I'm like, well, let me show you River Phoenix. Let me show you these young actors. He still didn't know who they were.
And because we were having fun with this one, and we're covering all three of the topics in the title, Looper, Edge of Tomorrow, or Groundhog Day. Dave.
Oh boy, I really like watching Tom Cruise die a lot. Edge of Tomorrow, but man, I love Groundhog Day. Man, there's something about the opportunity for a guy that's just kind of a tool to get a bunch of do-overs until he can do it right. Like that really kind of speaks to me, especially now, man. I'm 50. I'm in the Thursday of life. I certainly would like a few do-overs. So I really like Groundhog Day.
And it would be the perfect chance to re-release a remastered version on launch day of the original, just to troll people. Nothing changes. They re-release it like it's a brand new movie, Groundhog Day 2.
Yeah, and it's the same thing.
Yes.
So many trolling opportunities. It would be genius, and it could be how they re-release a remastered 4K whatever version. I'd be down for it. It's an excellent movie. All right, Hunter.
Edge of Tomorrow, because I've got a fun fact. There's
Go
a
on.
scene in the movie where the main character accidentally puts his wrist machine into Japanese. That's a callback to it coming from a Japanese book that the movie was made into.
Wasn't it also Tomorrow Never Dies or something like that? Was the
It
had
does
also,
have an alternate name like Live, Die, Repeat.
yeah, there we go. I knew there was
All You Need Is Kill.
All You Need Is Kill is the original. Yep.
okay. So all right. What about you, James?
So I do love Edge of Tomorrow or Live, Die, Repeat or All You Need Is Kill, whichever variation we're going with on the marketing. I thought it was one of the more well-written, well-done, well-executed time travel movies. Plus, Hensley makes a great point. You get to see Tom Cruise bite it a lot and also suck at something for a really long time and get his comeuppance. So that was nice. But I got to go OG. Bill Murray, Groundhog Day, the 5 stages of death, coming to terms with your life, the redemption. And plus, who wouldn't want the chance to hyperfixate on all these little skill sets and have the time to actually be good at these things that we all want to do and keep those memories and just kind of keep going on and be like, okay, cool. ADHD paradise.
Okay, Jay.
Well, for all the reasons people said, Edge of Tomorrow is fantastic. I love that show, but Groundhog Day is a classic, and it is a classic for a reason. It is beautiful. The philosophy in there, the layers that are in there, is just it's so. You can watch it every year. I try to watch it on February 2nd every year, and it keeps getting better, and it's provided a great template for lots of I won't say imitations. I guess that's not the best way, but of other shows inspired by it that take it in a different direction. And anyway, just fantastic movie.
Okay, Lynn.
We already invoked one Emily Blunt movie, but I want to invoke the other one instead. Because Looper, how many? I mean, it's similar to my answer from the previous round. How many time travel movies is a lot of the plot focused on telekinetic powers and the mob?
Okay, excellent answer. LaVoice.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I had some issues. I kind of got distracted with my camera and mic going all wonky. What was the actual choices again? Looper,
Edge of Tomorrow, or Groundhog Day?
Groundhog Day. Yeah. I just over and over again, man. That movie never gets old.
You picked it last time and you want to pick it again.
Exactly.
All right, Stabby.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, Looper, Edge of Tomorrow, or Groundhog Day?
She's gonna go off brand.
She always does.
Happy Death Day.
Happy Death Day.
Good answer.
Great
that's
answer.
actually that's a good answer. Yeah.
We all know I'm Stabby. I'm the black cat of the group. I love my horror movies. If I could find a horror movie version of all of the movies that you were picking, I'm gonna go with them. Happy Death Day is just like Groundhog's Day, but with a lot more death.
But it
This one is
references
just
it.
kind of-
It
Hold on, Stabby.
references that at the end. They mention
this the-
yeah.
Is this the one where the girl keeps getting killed over and over again and she's trying to stop her own murder?
She gets killed in such creative ways. I was having a blast with it when they came out with the second one. I was on it that same week it dropped. I was like, I have to see the new one. So Happy Death
Well,
Day is my choice.
But Stabby, does she drive off a cliff in a truck with a groundhog at the wheel?
Don't drive angry.
In the
No.
second one, yeah.
But she does jump off of a bell tower. I shouldn't say jump. She just kind of lets herself fall.
In the second one, she jumps out of an airplane without a parachute and a bathing suit.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't you?
Well,
Go
she never
for it.
hits the ground. She always just lands right back in the bed. Think.
Yep.
All right, Nick.
I'm going to go on Brandon this time. Groundhog's Day. Did a little digging. He spent a cumulative 33 years in that time loop, the equivalent of.
I heard it was 5. I mean, 33 is even better, but
Yeah, it was somewhere around like 12, like some crazy amount of hours. And the people definitely argue about this on some weird subreddit, I'm sure.
oh yeah.
But I like the idea of 33 years because he was able to like do all these other skills. And that with 33 years in a time loop, I might actually get a book out. So,
Except for every morning you wake up and got to start again on page 1.
yeah, but it's already there. So
It's all skill.
you know, it's all.
Just
it's all
let me know
skills
when
there.
you want an editor.
That's when you become
I'll
a
come through
short
time and
story.
get the
Tomorrow.
book. Okay.
So yeah, Groundhog's Day, and like David said, it's one of my favorite lines is driving with Pakistani Phil. He drive over, he's like, "Don't drive angry," and I got to quote Zombieland where Bill Murray has a direct line to my funny bone. So
The scene where he drops the toaster in the bathtub.
oh yeah, love, laugh, toaster bath.
I liked all of them, but definitely Edge of Tomorrow has the most realistic combat scene in there when they land and the big guy stands up, "I made it," and splat, something falls right on him. Perfect timing for that scene. It's hysterical. All right, and finally, before we actually dive into the topic, because we sort of been tangentially doing that, the movie About Time, The Butterfly Effect, or Timeline. Dave.
Well, About Time, hands down. I mean, I enjoy Butterfly Effect, especially if you get the alternate ending. But About Time is by far my favorite of those three. Something about the opportunity to be able to go back and spend one more day with your dad. Just
Yeah.
like I can't turn away from that. And every time I watch it, I cry like a little kid. So.
All right. That's the Butterfly Effect and About Time are two I haven't seen, although when I was looking for lists of all the time travel movies, there was a lot of them I've somehow missed. So I found a list of 15 of the classics that I'm going to start watching. So that's on the top of that list. So, all right. Now that Dave's answered, Hunter.
Oh man, I feel so torn. Can I go off script? I'm gonna say A Sound of Thunder.
Oh, that's good.
What is that one? I'm not familiar.
From the Bradbury.
It's based on the Ray Bradbury short story.
Yeah.
Yep. So people take tours into the past to shoot, say, dinosaurs. What happens when you accidentally shoot something in the past that was not on your okayed shoot list? What does that do to the future? There we go.
And the original short story, a guy accidentally, speaking of the butterfly effect, actually accidentally killed a butterfly. And when he gets back to the future, see what I did there? When he gets back to the future, the entire timeline's been changed and everything's a little worse.
I've seen that one. And now that you mention it, or something like it, where they accidentally step on the butterfly on their like raised little path thing.
They have a little path that they go through in their time bubble that's safe, and he wanders off of it, and that's when things go south fast.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen that one too. That's a good one.
In time travel movies.
Okay, excellent answer. You got us talking there, Hunter. James.
So I'm with Hensley on About Time just because it's on its surface, it's a funny comedic movie, a little bit of a family, not necessarily drama, and then all of a sudden it just sucker punches you right in the gut, and you're like, whoa, they just dropped me in the deep end off of this one. But Another one I was thinking of talking about paradoxes. A little bit off script, but Arrival. Just because, if you're thinking of all time at once, then the events that you see in the future color your past, and that's like one of the most ultimate mind screw, time travel paradox movies, in my opinion. Well done, too.
Okay. Jay?
I didn't think everyone here was going to have seen that one, but yes, About Time. I was like, this is my sappy side, I guess. But dang it, especially being a father, that one hits hard, and yeah, that was one I hadn't actually heard too much about. But when we were watching, I got in a kick a few years ago trying to catch all the old time loop movies that I'd missed, and that one, again, it gets you right there. And, especially with the voluntary locking of time, like it can no longer go past this point. It's just, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Lynn?
Part of me wants to be sap. All right, I haven't seen About Time. I'd always like to. I need to. It'd be really easy to say, I want to go through the jugular again and say butterfly effect. But Timeline's kind of fun, too. Can I just pick Arrival because it's a better movie than all of them?
Sure.
Okay, Arrival it is.
Arrival's good.
Michael?
I'm going completely off script. Sorry.
Shocking to say.
Well, yeah, but it's going to be even more shocking when you hear the name of the film. Because it makes me into a complete sap, and that is Somewhere in Time.
Excellent movie.
That's
all-time favorite time travel movie because it's a romance and it's Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour and Christopher Plummer. Cannot go wrong with Somewhere in Time.
And the idea that you travel through time by sleeping,
by just willing yourself back in time.
It hits the lazy bone in all of us. We're like, oh, I'm going to go take a nap. What are you doing time traveling?
Nice.
I recently read the novel by Richard Matheson from that, and it's got a little bit of a darker twist.
Yeah,
I mean, it's Matheson. Of course, it has a darker twist.
Yeah, I'm kidding.
All right, Stabby. Did we scare you away?
No.
Butterfly effect or timeline?
Okay, so the only movie out of all of those that I have seen is Butterfly Effect. So obviously my sappy bone doesn't work too really well. But then again, I never saw The Notebook either. So that's a whole different story. But there's one time travel movie that nobody's touching on, and it gives the perfect example of how you can mess things up, and that's Hot Tub Time Machine.
Yeah.
Because if you don't remember Lugal, then you don't know nothing about nothing.
Hot Tub Time Machine. Classy. I dig it. All right, Nick.
Well, as the resident comic book dude in this panel, and we're talking about time travel, I'm going to go with Avengers Endgame.
Okay.
Which is going to create a spin-off series with Captain America returning the stones to clip all the little branches of the paradoxes.
If he doesn't look like the guy from Losers, if he goes up the elevator, I'm just saying.
That would be fun.
So that would actually make sense as to why Chris Evans is in so many different comic books movies, because for a while there, the rule was you got one universe. You were either in DC or Marvel, and then Chris Evans was in at least 6 different comic book properties, including 2 from Marvel.
Yeah, he was the he was the Human Torch. He was Captain America. Then he was in Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yep.
He was in Losers. He was in Push.
Yeah,
he
Push.
Push is really good.
There's another one I'm thinking of.
Push is good.
But he's the one that broke the mold.
Yeah.
So
he's an ultra comic book nerd too.
If we're talking about comic books, Snowpiercer, based on a comic book.
Yep.
Nothing to do with
Okay.
time
I did
travel.
not
That's
know
what
that.
I was thinking of.
We're gonna try to stick to time travel because I can't go back in time and fix it if you don't. So for me, I
You just
like
need a time machine made out of a DeLorean.
I like the movie Timeline because I like the idea that going into the past was your fated future all along. Because remember, as they're going through and they're excavating this site, they find the glasses that are modern construction but have been carbon dated to be older, the 600 years old or so. And
Is that
so
the one based on the Crichton novel?
yes.
Okay.
And so he goes back in time and falls in love, and he uses the gunpowder, which is kind of cool to defend things because he takes his knowledge of stuff, which was kind of fun.
I read the Crichton novel. I didn't see the film.
I have seen the film but not read the novel, but I've been working my way through Crichton's stuff because he's a dude as ahead of his time when it comes to scientific thinking and then turning it into some pretty awesome novels.
You should read some of his speeches on environmentalism as a religion. They're
I
outstanding.
bet that would fight.
Make sure you read Eaters of the Dead.
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah.
Okay. And then lastly, since we have so many people here, I'm not going to do everyone's favorite coffee choice because we want to actually talk about the topic. So Stabby, what has been in your mug lately since you are my fellow coffee addict on the hostage side of things?
I got a new mug for my new coffee.
Okay.
I have frosted sugar cookie coffee brand coffee with.
Show us your mug.
If you could see it, it's kind of shiny. It's
Just a
girl who loves skulls.
Just a girl who loves skulls.
I dig it.
And
All
then
right,
if
so
I turn it
Folks
around,
practice.
there's a skull on the other side.
hold on. Just turn it back around. I dig it. All right, and so what's in the mug today?
Today it is frosted sugar cookie coffee brand coffee with Nestle Toll House chocolate chip cookie creamer.
Okay.
It's a cookie and a cookie and a coffee.
Can I have
Cookie squared coffee.
Yeah, so I've been doing a lot of the hot chocolate from them lately, and then for my coffee fix, I've just been drinking, standard French vanilla from the 8 o'clock coffee brand because 25 cents a K-Cup if you get it on Amazon.
Okay, honestly though, so we know I have my coffee and I have my orange juice and then I have my water cup because I travel with like 4 cups at any given time. So
Is it just because you get beverage ADD and you can't commit?
no, okay, so
She's actively trying to develop kidney stones.
the Mandalorian cup keeps my juice in it because I get low blood sugar. So I have my juice always just in case that's why you guys see me eating so much. Come on. And then coffee, and because I'm doing dry January, so there's no booze in any of my cups right now.
Outstanding. All right. And so if you use the code podcast grunts, link is in the show notes. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win. And now we're going to air that beautiful bean footage, show the commercial, and come right back to talking about all things time related. Boom.
When a young officer no longer wants to be an instrument of destruction. Sacrifices are a necessary part of leadership. Get used to having blood on your hands, and whose job is to help a warlord annihilate humankind. I will unleash this bioweapon on the galaxy, but first, I need to control her. He plays a dangerous game to escape to the warlord's greatest rival.
Hundreds of people loved her. They gave their lives for her, and she will never know.
Discover a galaxy with epic space battles, tangled loyalties, and the pursuit of freedom, sacrifice, and redemption. The Handler's Gambit by Ingrid Moon. Available wherever books are sold. And check for the audiobook coming soon.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. And now we're going to talk about paradoxes, time loops, and all things time travel. So first, do you guys have a preference? Do you prefer the time loops, the paradoxes of time, or just straight, time travel with no deeper thinking? Do you guys have a preference?
Yes.
Okay. More than one word answers would be helpful. Go on.
Time loops are my favorite. I think paradoxes are fun, but they've kind of been done, I felt. But I love the time loop stories.
Okay.
Turns
Hunter?
out I don't care as long as when I watch the movie the second time or read the book again, it actually works.
Right.
Like murder mysteries where you look at the clues and you're like, no, he wasn't in the room for the murder.
Oh, that would be huge. Have you found that in a murder mystery? I don't read them, so I don't.
Oh, murder mystery movies all the time. When you go back and try to see when the killer would have done it, and it's like, this isn't possible, guys, unless this killer moves at super speeds. They were only out of the room like 4 seconds.
Agatha Christie movies are generally the exception to the rule for that, because Agatha Christie built her stories. They were designed for you to figure it out if you were paying attention.
Anybody could be the killer. Like when she wrote them, she didn't know who the killer was till she got to the end.
Right, and that's why she's the queen of the red herring, because you're just
They're all red herrings.
Yeah, everybody.
Until the one that actually reveals itself.
But as far as time travel goes, if you want to talk time travel and murderers, I enjoyed the film Time After Time.
Thank you. I was wanting to mention that. Thank you.
Jack the Ripper steals H.G. Wells's time machine that he actually built in his basement and runs to the future and tries to kill Mary Steenburgen. And just a great movie. I think my favorite scene is still when H.G. Wells, played by Roddy McDowell, is in a McDonald's and he's ordering, and the guy in front of him, I'll have a Big Mac, a Coke, and some fries. And so he goes up and it's, what would you like to order, sir? I'll have a Big Mac, fries. Oh, and tea, please. You know, it was just so great.
If you want to talk about murder mystery and time travel, what about Time Cop with Van Damme? Was another good one.
Not much of a mystery, but it was cool. It was a cool
but the scene where he touches the other guy, the other version of him, and then they kind of cease to exist. That was
kind of grouped together. It's awesome.
That was reminding me of The Man Who Folded Himself. Anybody else ever read that?
Oh yeah.
It was a crazy time travel story. This guy just kept going back, and it was the paradox writ large, where he just kept coming up with new versions of himself, male and female versions. 2 of them got together. It was really creepy and weird. It was a bizarre story. Find it. It's out there somewhere.
Well, it's not. At least time travel. Sometimes when they don't pay attention to timelines, you end up with some incestuous pairings accidentally. So one of the movies actually made it to the first airing. I think it was Kate and Leopold was the movie where they realized that he was sleeping with his grandmother, and they had to remaster the movie. But if you're sleeping with a female version of yourself,
a problem for Fred Ward in Time Rider.
I don't know if that counts. Like, how would you even classify that? Because it's you. So
he became his own grandpa. Speaking of Ray Stevens, as we did in the pre-show.
Futurama does that. He becomes his own
right.
grandfather.
Yep.
Okay. I like all of the above as long as it makes you think.
Yeah. As long as it makes you think, but also I love the cool twist. And for cool twists on time travel, time loops, and paradoxes, with the longest running history of them, you can't beat Doctor Who.
Right.
Doctor Who has just been the home of the coolest time travel stuff ever. And I think it culminated when the TARDIS materialized inside itself. And so you have the Doctor is played by Matt Smith and Rory and Amy going in and out of the TARDIS and replacing themselves as they try to figure out how to fix it. It was just the coolest little paradox. But I think my favorite paradox in a novel was John DeChance's Star Rigger series. The premise of that whole book is he's a trucker, and there's these roads that connect planets. And you don't think it's a time travel story until you get to the very last book, which is called Paradox Alley, where they have to go back and set up all the events that took place that affected them through the whole series of books. And it was just the coolest way to wrap up the whole story. If you get a chance to read those, they're excellent.
So what about you, Dave? Do you have a preference? The loops, the paradoxes, or the just straight time travel?
Oh, man. As long as they can tell me a good story that makes sense on the second or third or fourth rewatch, I'm with Hunter on that. Like if one watch through, I'm kind of distracted by the rule of cool. I don't necessarily notice when you do dumb things. But if I rewatch it and I'm like, oh, that's just stupid, like it ruins the movie for me. So like Back to the Future, I've rewatched, I don't know, man. I can't even count how many times, and I love it every single time. Like, there's nothing that happens in Back to the Future that ruins it for me. So honestly, if they can just tell me a good story and it's consistently good, I'm happy.
I
And,
want a Back to the Future movie where Principal Skinner saves the world from the apocalypse. That's what I want to see.
Or he has hair. Jesus Christ, so that guy never had hair?
Not in anything I've seen him in.
Yeah.
All right, what about you, James? You've been quiet lately.
It really depends on the execution. I'm with Hunter and Hensley there. As long as it stands up to a rewatch and is actually pretty well founded and solid. I tend to like loops better. One of my favorite like Stargate episodes is Window of Opportunity, which is where O'Neill and Tilk get stuck in a time loop, and they're the only ones who remember they are stuck in a time loop, and the entire Earth is cut off from the gate system. So you spend the first, after the first opening act, you spend like the first third of this episode looping back and forth, them learning like ancient dialects from Daniel, them going through other stuff, them seeing how these loops start each time. And then I love it when they just go off the rails, similar to Groundhog Day, where they're just like, you know what? We're going to take a few loops off. And they're just doing insane shit, riding around the base. He kisses Carter. And then just one of the funniest moments, O'Neill and Tilk are playing golf through the Stargate.
Oh, I remember that.
On this overhead and yells. And I was like, and O'Neill's like, in the middle of my backswing. And it was just so funny. I lost it at that episode, and I will watch that episode every time I see it.
So the problem with the time loops that I always go back to is, how do you know it's when the last one's going to be? Because if you do something too crazy and that was the last one, you're screwed.
Yeah, that's why I like it as like a tropey episode idea, not necessarily as a thought-provoking time travel usage. It's fun for the trope. And that one, they had a hard out of, they solve the problem and figure out that code at the destination world they're going to. But otherwise, yeah, it's like that. I actually wrote that. I actually wrote that as a story.
It seems like a lot of the time loopy stuff, there's sort of a moral underpinning that happens in the time loop story. Like Groundhog Day, he doesn't get out of the loop until he's kind of figured it all out.
Exactly.
So there's nothing that he can do that's too crazy that'll screw him, because if he does the crazy thing, well, he hasn't learned the lesson yet, so it just loops around again. Same with the Supernatural Mystery Spot time loop episode. But, if there's a moral underpinning there, and until they learn the lesson, they're stuck in the loop.
Yeah, you can do that on a big scale too. There was a series called The Time Wars by Simon Hawke, and the premise is, in the 31st century, we have ended war in our time because we have figured out a way to time travel, and we infiltrate soldiers into the armies of the past. So the opposing sides submit their grievances. The soldiers go back in the past. Say you drop guys on either side of the conflict where Hannibal crosses the Alps. Okay? And whoever loses the most soldiers in that battle loses the dispute in the future. And so everybody was happy about it, and until they realized at some point later in the books that one of the consequences of time travel is that you can cause a time stream split. And you had an alternate universe, an alternate timeline running alongside, like a boulder dropped in the middle of the stream. And the danger was the two timelines would come back together eventually with catastrophic results. And then they realized the moral component was that they invented this device called a warp grenade, which could focus all the power of a nuclear explosion to the size of a pinhead, and the excess energy gets clocked out through a Einstein-Rosen bridge. But they didn't realize that the bridge was messed up, and it was actually sending all that nuclear energy into the alternate timeline. So they'd been unwittingly waging nuclear war on an alternate version of themselves. It was just mind-blowing series.
When you look at alternate timelines, have you guys seen the movie Terra, the TV series? It was a good show. It went to Fox. Of course, they canceled it. But Terra Nova with the dinosaurs. And basically, it's the old post-apocalyptic vibe where we've destroyed the Earth. So we've got to go somewhere. So we go back into the Jurassic, essentially, where the air would be pure. But because we maintain a constant bridge, after the first person goes, everyone keeps going to the same time. You end up creating an alternate timeline. So you're transferring to like a new parallel timeline by linking it with this bridge to start over for humanity. Have you guys watched that one? It was on Fox a couple years ago.
Oh yeah,
I saw a
It's
few
like
episodes.
the
of
first
it.
episode, but yeah.
It was awesome, and it ended on a cliffhanger, which still makes me mad. I hate Fox Entertainment. They always find good shows, get me hooked, and then they cancel them for no freaking reason.
Yep.
Well, the
Not that I'm
cliffhanger
still
is
bitter.
the ultimate cry for a second season. It's like, hey, we leave the fans wanting enough. Maybe they'll riot and get the executives to give them what they want.
The problem with that is at a certain point in time, like if it's a Fox show, you're like, well, I mean, maybe I'll wait till season 10 so I know they're not going to cancel it. And so it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy for them.
Fox is a place where good shows go to die.
Yeah. And they did take this guy from me. The song was a lie.
And the adventures of, what was that?
Briscoe County
Bruce
Jr.
Campbell show. Briscoe County Jr., which is also awesome.
Would you, time travel is going from one point in time and fixed point to another. Would you consider parallel dimensions to be in the time travel genre, or would you consider that to be something separate?
Depends on which set of time travel rules you're playing with. I mean,
That's how
for
it's set up.
a long time, time was considered linear. It was, nobody ever thought about, oh crap, the Earth's not at that point in space anymore. You materialize in nothing. Nobody thought of that. Everybody thought you could go back and strangle Hitler in his crib and it would be okay. All kinds of weirdness. But boom, everybody's now is like, oh no, you created an alternate timeline. It's a whole multiverse thing. The TVA shows up and zaps you into the dumpster.
I have that shirt.
Oh, I love Loki so much.
That was a fun show, man. It was a fun show.
And you get to see Loki every episode. I mean, and it was a great show.
Are you a Hiddleston?
No, I saw the twinkle in your eye, Hunter.
Yeah, okay.
It's all about Loki for you. We get it. New kink unlocked.
See, there was
She's a married
a
woman.
story.
I'm gonna have to tell my husband about that. See if he can,
I can print him the horns if it helps.
All right, let's keep this family friendly. We just killed her branding. Okay, so
I'm sorry. It's always Nick's fault.
It's okay.
I want to see the banner right now.
So do you consider? I mean, it depends. Is a hard answer when you're trying to have a fluid conversation. So does anybody else have opinions on the dimension hopping versions of Earth? I mean, would you consider that part of the time travel sort of genre or its own thing?
I think
Well, it goes back to what
being
Michael was
more
saying
often than
about
not.
the rules we're playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
it's kind of a way
spoilers.
to get away from the paradox. You either have a paradox where you've got, in the one timeline and changing the past will change the causal relationship with the present, or you say, oh, that's just created an alternate, timeline, and then all of it can exist and you escape the paradox problem. So it's kind of there's probably third routes around there. I've considered a few, but I'm not sure if I've seen that many.
I think the best example of that is X-Men Days of Future Past, because he goes back to the future through his own mind, because she's in his brain sending him back and it's changing the future. And I think that is one of the coolest aspects that I've saw with time travel, because it's not a machine, it's not this, it's not that, it's just her making him travel in time through his own mind.
Yeah, there was a cool example of that too. What it was, you're a horror fan, Stabby. You'll love this one. Prince of Darkness. Remember that movie where they were using tachyon transmissions to beam information back into the past? That was dope. So that was kind of like mixing the two genres.
God, that movie is so freaking cool.
It's one of the few horror movies I actually enjoyed. I actually went to see it because Alice Cooper was in it, but other than that, it was actually
there's
pretty
not
decent.
that many movies where you can get Alice Cooper to be the head of a horde of homeless zombies, but that one's got it.
It's got it.
If you want a good time travel horror movie, Totally Killer is the one that you want to do. Obviously, I'm a sucker for Happy Death Day. I love that one. But Totally Killer, her and her friend build a time machine, go back in time to stop the Sweet 16 killer from killing her mom and her mom's friends. And I'm just over here like, well, how would that work? And I'm just sitting there like, and you watch her go back in time and everybody's, what is that? It's my phone. That's not a phone. And you see the brains working. It was just a beautiful movie. Beautiful movie.
I wrote it down. I'll check it out.
I feel like somebody's going to have to like make the master list of every movie that was even mentioned or book that was even mentioned here, so we can make a reading list. Because
I already have a list going over here, y'all. Like, it's already going down.
Same.
But does
I threw on
anybody?
there Adam Project as well, because I mean that's
I don't know if this is.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if this is in your list of questions, JR. But does anybody have a particular favorite paradox? There's several different types.
when you do a Google search, you have the grandfather paradox, or where basically, if you go back in time to kill or to either kill or stop a kill, if you succeed, then you eliminated your reason for going back in time, so you didn't go back in time, so it happened. There's the one where the person that gets you out of the time travel is someone not you, and it creates, they call it the ontological. I could be pronouncing that wrong.
The Father's Day paradox, basically.
They call it the bootstrap paradox. So the paradox,
bootstrap paradox, right?
When an object or person is sent back in time, but then recovered by anyone else. And then the other one I found, because I found 3 of them, would be the predestination, which is when the cause leads to the effect, which would be like the timeline movie / book. But I know there's more. I just couldn't find them.
Yeah, the bootstrap paradox would be the somewhere in time one with the watch. Where did the watch come from?
Okay.
Yeah, or the example from Doctor Who. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I have a book comp. I mean, I wasn't familiar with that paradox, but if someone wanted a good book that came out recently, which uses it, it would be The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. It kicks off when someone's given a book which can open doors through time and space.
That's cool.
The Book of Doors. I read a book back when I was in my teenage years. It was an interesting premise because it was kind of the Beethoven / bootstrap paradox. I call it the Beethoven paradox because my favorite example of it is from Doctor Who, where it was the Peter's doctor. He went back and he wanted to meet Beethoven, but he found out that Beethoven couldn't actually write music, and so he obtained copies of all the music and did it for him instead. But that begs the question, where did the music come from? But this other book, though, was this guy goes back in time and he wants to meet Jesus. Problem is, Jesus is a deaf mute and he can't possibly fulfill the mission. So this guy does it for him, goes to the cross and everything. I was just like, that's so weird, dude. But it was the whole, bootstrap paradox. Without that guy going back, would there be Christianity? That was the whole premise.
What was the name of this movie?
It wasn't a movie, it was a book. And I thought of it earlier today and I cannot find the actual title. It's driving me crazy.
Are you talking about, there was a movie that came out in 2020, which was called Assassin 33 AD, which was, they were going back. Extremists were literally inventing a time machine to go back in time to kill Jesus before the resurrection.
Oh, wow.
And then you follow a group of like super genius MIT types that are going to try to stop it. It's definitely that. I mean, there's some fun philosophical discussions in that movie. I've seen it.
Yeah, that would be some philosophical. I'm gonna have to check.
I mean, it was a little on the campy side because it was kind of like a B movie. It wasn't full, production value. But even still, no, not at all. But even still, with that, like the idea of what happens when you change time and what that does to your time, and it's and of course you throw in the religious component by default because the extremists are actually trying to kill Jesus so he can't resurrect. Although, would that
or they're trying to get it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. Then wouldn't he resurrect just a little bit sooner?
Starting the event,
Yeah.
Well, we find in a lot of these movies that have to deal with time travel, and Tony Stark quoted it best in Endgame, is that when you push against time, time tends to push back.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's
another that was a thing. Yeah, in the Time Wars series, there were a lot of self-correcting, what they called temporal disruptions. And there was a terrorist organization in the book that their goal was to keep going back in time, creating temporal disruptions with the intent of creating a time stream split so that the temporal war people would shut down their war machine. And
So there's
it
also
was
there's
defeated.
I think that was an episode of Enterprise too.
yeah.
Could have been. I thought the coolest
Enterprise
thing
did a
about
lot of time travel stuff with Q or in those.
yeah,
It was
slingshotting
weird.
around the sun, Save the Whales episode.
So there's another movie that involves time travel and Jesus. It's called The Hunt for the Hidden Relic and came out in 2002. A German archaeologist discovers a 2,000-year-old skeleton that has with it instructions for a video camera that appears to have recorded a time traveler who filmed Jesus. I haven't seen that one, but when I was doing the game of the Assassins one, it came up. So I'm going to have to check it out. Because like I said, the fun thing with time travel is it makes you think.
Was it directed by Uwe Boll?
So one of the classics of the genre of time travel is the alternate timeline king Harry Turtledove, who did it with like his Guns of the South, which is a fun one if you want to see like modern weapons in historic times. Because in that one, like racial extremists from South Africa pre-apartheid basically take AK-47s to assist the South in winning. And if you think about the AK-47 can fire 50-ish rounds a minute if you want to break it, and the average Springfield fires 3 to 6 a minute. I mean, I can imagine one guy sounds like a whole army coming at you. So, and it made me want to write a time travel book where like we take some M2s, some Brownings to take care of the British when they land.
Oh, we don't need
there's,
that.
got-
Two
was it Eric
240s
Flynn?
and about 1,000 rounds. Good to go.
Have you guys seen the movie Bigelow, which was about time travel to World War I pilots?
I've seen Deuce Bigelow. Does that count?
Different movie. Different movie.
Well, that
Probably
one
less.
too.
But yeah, it's about some guys. Biggles, excuse me, Adventures in Time, not Bigelow. Biggles came out in '86, and this one he actually goes back to fly World War II or World War I fighter planes, and fighting with the British. It's kind of cool.
You'll tough with camel.
Yes, and we got Stabby dancing, so there's that on this episode.
I think another cool thing about time travel, the whole
Stabby
idea.
found the book.
Oh, cool! Good job. Which was the one I was talking about?
Mhm,
the one-
that's why I was dancing, because Stabby.
Please,
Stabby found the
please.
book. So it's called Behold the Man. It's a fictional novel by a British writer called Michael Moorcock.
Yes, author
Hey,
of the Elric
British writer.
series and
Elric.
lots more. Yeah, Elric.
But Carl travels back in time. He's badly injured during his journey, crawls halfway out of the time machine and faints. John the Baptist finds him. He goes on his search to Nazareth to find Jesus. When he finds Mary and Joseph, apparently they are their child Jesus is profoundly intellectually disabled and hunchback. He is
Wow, I misremembered that one.
deaf and mute, but the only words that he knows is Jesus, 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 Jesus. So
Wow.
So wait a minute. I was just thinking about it. One of the ones that could be a funny idea on the time travel, go back and kill somebody kind of thing. What if going back in time and everyone constantly showing up trying to kill Hitler is why Hitler became Hitler? Because all these jerks just keep showing up trying to kill him.
Or worse, like
Nice.
like there's an entire division of like time police whose entire job is to keep Hitler alive because every other timeline without him is infinitely worse.
Right?
Oh,
Imagine being on that
great, great idea. You owe me a trilogy. All right.
So like, there's plenty of reasons why the Jewish individuals might want Hitler dead for obvious reasons. So what if, from his perspective, a bunch of Jewish people just keep showing up trying to kill him, and that's why Hitler became Hitler? And you'd have to lean into the comedy, because if you went too serious with it, it'd be a very dark book.
This sounds like another Taika Waititi film. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't
I
there
don't know.
a meme?
I've seen him do that time period, Nick. It'd
Yeah.
be dark.
There's that
Why
meme
did-
that if people from the future don't stop me from doing it, how bad of an idea really is it?
Oh yeah, you saw lots of those during the COVID lockdown where people were making those little skits.
Speaking of changing the future, though, the cool thing about it is, what happens if you change an event in the past, right? That of course affects everything downstream in the timeline, but somebody in the future timeline has knowledge that isn't changed. Here's my point. In the Khyber Pass, a young Winston Churchill is killed instead of surviving a battle. So he doesn't go on to be the prime minister. The whole future has changed. In this future, the people that are doing the time travel have cerebral implants. It's how they get knowledge. It's how they're educated. It's how they speak other languages. And because Churchill dies in the Khyber Pass, none of them have any memory of the events of World War II as we know them, except for one guy who read actual books. And his memories weren't changed by the timeline. His experiences of reading those books was still intact. So he was able to figure it out, and then they went back and they saved Churchill in the Khyber Pass. And so just changing the timeline, how did that not change the history books this guy read? That was the one plot hole in the whole Time War series I could never figure out.
There was a story, I think it's from a collection of them, that's kind of like a dark Doctor Who by John C. Wright, and the one story was the plural of Helen of Troy, and it kind of it has this whole it's got John F. Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe and all kinds of crazy stuff, and the idea is, if you've got all these different Time Lords, basically, what happens when they're all battling it, and these guys go through suddenly a blur of images of hundreds of different timelines that they go through as they're trying to do something, and that finally ends in a stalemate because everything they do has been countered hundreds of times by these other Time Lords, and they just kind of have this vague memory of all of this happening. And anyway, it's a very twisted but also very interesting story of what happens when you get a whole bunch of time travelers involved that could all keep changing the results to be in their favor and end up fighting each other over it.
Well,
it's spy versus spy it's spy versus spy with time travel.
Yeah,
right.
You got to think about time as like a calm lake, because this has been discussed. For those of you that are Whovians, you throw a pebble and it creates a ripple. So what if you throw multiple stones in there and it just somehow creates this really weird ripple where it's kind of the same but a little bit different? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's how we got COVID.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's definitely how we got COVID.
A fun, thought-provoking one's a short story by Joe Vasicek, because I like a lot of his stuff. But he did the Gettysburg Paradox, where people would go back in time to participate in the battle, and then the more you learn, you realize, and this is a spoiler because it's a short story, but that almost everyone there fighting in that battle are actually time travelers from the future who wanted to participate, and so they ended up creating their own past.
See, reenactors are nothing but a pain.
Poor Pickett. His entire division is time travelers.
And that's why they couldn't engage, right? Like, man, if they had just come,
because they all left.
So, so obviously the time travel is such a broad topic that this is potentially spawning a whole bunch of potential future spin-off episodes or parallel episodes, if you were. So do you guys have any closing thoughts about the concepts that you really like that speak to you when it comes to time travel, time paradoxes, or time loops?
Yeah, there's one thing we haven't really touched on that I really like, the concept of time travelers going forward and backwards. So, for example, Arrival's kind of like that. You have the time as one continuous fourth dimension you've seen all at once, but you've also got stuff like Tenet, where you have some people moving forward in time and others with information moving back in time. Or to go more fantastical classic mythology, the legends around Merlin the Wizard, who is supposed to be living backwards in time, so he would know the future and know what events needed to happen, so he fixes it so those happen as they pass him by as he's going backwards. So stuff like that I find very interesting. It's definitely one of the ones that gets my brain churning as far as thought provoking. Just that kind of that dual stream, the information passing backwards while time streams moving forward.
Yeah, there was a nice. Sorry, go ahead, Lynn.
I was reminded of a discussion we danced around in the pre-show where we're talking about Babylon 5. That is probably my favorite stable time loop and inspired me to write a book. But the entire notion of humans getting Minbari souls is tied to the fact that Valen has a human soul, which he allowed, and because of his development and everything, he lets, thousands of years later, he lets Delenn become partially human, which, because of time travel, lets Valen get human stuff too. It is basically, it's a stable time loop. It's like, which one's first? Yes, they both are.
Yeah, a little bit of the bootstrap paradox there, kind of.
Yeah, that's. I was going to mention the River Song character from Doctor Who. Her encounters with the Doctor she's moving backwards along their respective timeline while he's moving forwards. The first time that he meets her, she's already met him several times and has this diary, but he has no idea who she is. And then as the series progresses, it converges in this really cool night on Beryllium. But spoilers. I won't go into too much detail. But it's a very fascinating
spoilers, darling.
Because she interacts with 4 different versions of the Doctor.
It's implied all of them.
It's implied all of them, but on screen we only saw 4.
Eccleston, Tennant, Smith, and Capaldi.
Yeah.
So one of the things that comes up is when people intentionally time travel, they try to make themselves blend in, right? So they wear period clothing. Has anybody addressed like consequences when they don't wear period stuff? Like, I don't know, maybe the stitching is wrong or whatever. It's Farby, if you would.
Yeah. I remember there's an episode of Doctor Who. I believe they're visiting I think it's Elizabeth I, and it's Rose Tyler's there, and she always calls Rose Tyler the naked girl.
Yes, because she was running around in a miniskirt.
Yep, the naked girl.
Yeah, that's one of the soldiers referred to her as that when they first pick her up. They're about to haul her off. What are you doing with this wee naked girl?
Speaking of time travel, we've talked about this time travel topic for almost over an hour, and nobody mentioned the Outlander series, which was one of the most famous ones.
Oh, I need to throw something in here about. Hold on, I need to throw something in here about clothing real quick because you brought that up, and I need to throw something in there. All of you guys over here, all of you guys would fail back in those times because the men wore high heels. I'm just letting you know.
Darling, I'm a theater kid. I can do high heels.
I was about to say, I'm ridiculously tall. You don't want me in heels. That's what people tell me all the time, at least. So,
but can you do it fabulously, Michael?
Yes, I played Mozart and Amadeus, and we had the high heels, and I didn't even need the powdered wig back then because I had long hair. And they just did ringlets up the sides and pulled the ponytail on the back and put a big bow on it, baby.
Nice.
Love that.
Well, one thing that's not, as we were talking, we've talked about people who have the different knowledge from the future, moving backwards, the Merlin thing. But one of the concepts I've played with, haven't done anything with writing yet, is as humans we are time travelers that move in one direction. And so our view of cause and effect is, temporally related with that direction. But what about the idea that, again, and I think we've kind of touched on it a little bit, is, where time itself has a totally different, perspective, and is again setting up things in the past to happen because it moves in both directions or in multiple directions. And it's like, no, this has to be there, and whatever it takes to get it there is going to happen. And so the cause of the rock being on the street is because it has to go through the window tomorrow.
It's the fixed point in time theory.
Yeah. There's a really good novel I read a couple years ago. This is How We Lose the Time War. That was very much like that. They planted the seeds that both went forward and backward, just to play with timelines, not necessarily people, but like events. Like you say, the rock on the street because it's got to go through the window. Well, the counter agent would put that pebble on the other side, so it hit the other window, and you would have a totally different outcome.
So one thing people often ignore with time travel, though, is you can only go so far back unless you spoke foreign languages. And I think somebody said it was like the 1600s, is like, because eventually English becomes Middle English and then Old English, and modern English would sound, I mean, it's a foreign language at that point. And that's one of the things that always gets me is they somehow can go back and just speak the regular language and everyone understands them.
The TARDIS translation circuit.
I was about to say the universal translators.
Well, I mean,
Like
one of
in
the
the
things,
Black Knight, like in the
Well, heck,
Black
that's
Knight,
the-
when Mark Lawrence goes back into time.
That's the beauty of Quantum Leap, right? Like Sam Beckett can only travel in his own time frame, like in his own lifetime. So he's not really stuck with having to like blend in a completely alien culture. Like he might have to blend in, you know, in the body of a pilot in the 1960s, which is a little different from his timeline, you know, being in the 80s, but he's certainly not going to have to blend in with like nobles and peasants in the 16th century.
Well, Sam Beckett mostly stayed in the United States too. They didn't.
This is true.
Right. I think he ended up in
out-
Vietnam I think he ended up in his brother's body at one point.
So, but always where he could speak the language.
And he did give birth, which makes him one of the first men to give birth, apparently,
That's
or
right.
only man on TV or whatever it was.
But he was also fixing temporal disruption, which is pretty cool. The
Yeah,
whole
so I
idea
did a
of
quick Google
fixing
search.
history.
So
Yeah,
around 1500s, as far back as a modern English speaker could go and still be understood and understand them. Although obviously some of the idioms and phrasings would be weird. But yeah, you could go back as far as about 1500s. But that's why like the kinetic, the kid eating off the sport and all that wouldn't necessarily work because it'd be a foreign language. So it's definitely a lot to think about. I think a couple of people are doing modern, like contemporary authors are starting to revisit time travel as a concept again, because for a while it fell out of favor in history, or in favor of alternate history. And I think you're starting to see more time travel straight up again.
there's another wrinkle along with the speaking bit. It's that people where you go may not end up sounding the way you expect. I've been told by people who've studied the time period, so again, grain of salt there, it's a little bit on the side of hearsay, that if you were to go to, if you were trying to find somebody that speaks in a British accent in, say, colonial Boston, they'd sound like people from Boston, because apparently that's what the British sounded like back then.
Yeah, it tracks.
The British sounded like people from Massachusetts now.
Put the car in the garage.
Talk to Con.
I've heard that before. That's not the first time I've heard that, where the modern British accent is actually a development after the Revolutionary War.
Yep.
To differentiate themselves from the colonies.
Yeah, just like Shakespearean English is a hardcore twist on the Southern accent. Southern accent's just slowed down a bit.
I have heard
Lost
that.
I've heard that.
Lost
one
my
too.
car in the Harvard yard.
So the other thing that factors in, and most people don't realize, but I went to college as a history major in the South. A large part of the Southern accent is also influenced by the African slaves, because it was the mammies that taught the people, the nobles and the well-off people. So it was kids tend to emulate what they hear. So some of that came from like Caribbean accents speaking English. It's just part of it too. So, but all right. So there's lots of sub threads we could go on. So if you, dear listener, want any particular angle for us to hit, or if you guests want us to narrow it down, this was a fun topic. I want to keep going, but I promised Hunter she could get to sleep because she's got to feed the chickens that she lost. So that means she has to travel back in time from before she lost them to get them back. It's going to be a whole ordeal for her.
I'm not going to get a wink of sleep.
just go back a week and sleep again.
But before we go, we do need to make that announcement, JR, that there is a time travelers meeting. It's going to be last Tuesday at 3 p.m. at the library. So,
And if you figure out the significance of when this episode airs, report back to us. We want to know who gets it first. We might find a prize for you. And with that, this is the part where I remind you, dear listener, to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platform. Your reviews help the right people find the right book. So do your part. Leave a review. Books, movies, comics, it doesn't matter. Do all of the things. And with that, Dave, can you tell listeners and viewers how they can find you at home or in time?
I'm really pretty easy to find. You can find me at davidwhensley.com, or you can find me at David Hensley Writes on Facebook. Track down my group, Hensley Station. Click ask for an invite. I'll get you in there, and then we can just talk about nerdy story stuff anytime you want.
Okay, that is always a win, and it's you can steal memes there too. I hear people do that. I mean, not me, because I would never steal a meme, but other people do that.
Only the finest.
All right, Hunter, how can listeners and viewers find you at home?
What's my name?
Hunter K. Wallace.
Hey, Hunter, relax. You're not getting picked on nearly as much as MD Monster.
Look, you leave Bolshevik alone.
You can find me at Hunter... What? Huh? Oh, anyway.
They're running through all the gamut of different pronunciations of that guy's name that JR does.
Bullshit.
Hunter, where can listeners find you?
Well, you can find me at hunterkwallace.com and on Facebook as Hunter Coles Wallace or Hunter K Wallace. I'm both.
Okay. All right, next, but certainly not less important, is Mr. James JE Pittman. I don't know why I did it in that voice, but the caffeine is hit, so we're going to go with it.
You're just using it again, JR. Don't worry.
Morphed into John Pardo for a minute.
You can find me on halfacrepond.com. On the websites, it's linked to all of my socials. Facebook's JE Pittman Writes. All the rest are j.e.pittman or some variation thereof. And that's where you can find me. Just drop me a line, say hi, like my stuff, leave reviews like JR said. You know how it goes.
You could call him anything you want to, but except for late to last call. Because, that man likes his bourbon. All right,
don't
Jay.
talk about the speakeasies here.
What speakeasy? I have no recollection of that. Why wasn't I invited?
Jeez. It was last Tuesday.
All right, Jay, how can listeners and viewers find you?
You can find me at the very mysteriously named jbarnson.com. That's Barnson as son of a barn, not Barnazin as apparently Sony thought I was. Anyway, you could also find me as author J Barnson on Facebook and on X. It is Rampant Coyote. So anyway, you can find me there.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
All right, next we have Mr. Lynn Berry.
Len-Berry.com. Facebook, it's Worlds of Len. Instagram, it's Len_Berry. I'm on Blue Sky. I can't remember if it's Lynn Berry or Lynn. You just honestly, I need to fix it to where it just says Len-Berry.com there too. I'm in a lot of places. I have a home on Twitter still. If I start calling it X, I won't get to wear my awesome X-Men t-shirt anymore. I'm around. You can find me.
All right.
Len-Berry.com. Yeah.
Oh, freaking exciting. And next we have Mr. Michael LaVoice.
Hey, you can find me at michaellavoice.com. It's got all the links to my socials. It also has a link to my Substack blog. Oh, I got to do one of those this week. And also a list of appearances I've made on this podcast. If you want to check out the back episodes.
There are other podcasts, and you're allowed to go on them too. We won't consider it cheating if you go on other podcasts.
Really?
Yeah, no. We got an open.
Yes,
we got an open relationship.
Relationship, yeah.
We're polypodcast-ic or something. I don't know. That just sounded like an illness. So we're gonna wrap
I
it
don't
up.
think you want to put this out there as the polyamorous podcast. I don't think
No.
Well,
you can find us on our link tree.
All right.
LINK.
What site do we have to show you now?
I think I just broke the internet. All right, you can find us on our link tree at linktr.ee linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, linktree/ Blasters and Blades podcast, where we link to all the things the bit shoots, the rumbles, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Twitters, our Spotify website, our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email, Blasters and Blades podcast at gmail.com. Again, Blasters and Blades podcast at gmail.com for professional purposes only, people. Save the shenanigans for Madam Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, Twitter, and the email. You can support the show over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee till it falls out of their eyeballs. You know, I just realized we missed a golden opportunity, Nick. We should have done the outro as the intro and the intro as the outro, and it really messed with people on the time travel episode. How did I not think of that?
You can fix that in post, right?
I mean, I'm too lazy to do that. In theory, yeah, you could. But we do it raw because, okay, that's phrasing. You know what? Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this is the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time. We'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. And with that, we're going to hit the
Raw dogging.
before I step in it all over again. So with that, wait for it. Don't